Whether you're new to Flash or an experienced Flash designer, you're sure to be excited about the brand new 3D rotation and 3D translation tools in Flash CS4. These tools, which work exclusively with movie clip symbols, allow us to render 2D graphics in the 3D realm. This allows us to create unprecedented depth and perspective in our Flash animations and graphics like we haven't seen before. To get started, go ahead and open up the GearDepot4.fla starter file. And with your selection tool active, go ahead and click and select the 3-gear movie clip on the right-hand side of your masthead. You may remember from earlier, this simply contains an animation of our 3 gears in motion with an outer glow effect being tweened on and off. Now what I'd like to do to add further depth to this is actually to spin these around, maybe give them a 3D look or perspective. This will actually make my masthead stand out more and add a level of depth to my graphics that I don't have currently. With the movie clip selected, go ahead over to your Tools panel and directly below the Free Transform tool, locate and select the 3D Rotation tool. Once you do, you'll notice that your movie clip now appears with a unique set of color-coded handles. Each of these handles allows us to rotate this movie clip along 3 different axes, the X, Y, and Z axis. The orange outer handle allows us to do all 3 freely at once. Move your pointer back over the bounding box we see here. And let's start by taking a look at the green handle running horizontally from left to right. If you move your pointer over this, you'll see a little Y appears below your pointer. This lets us know that this handle, when clicked and dragged, will actually rotate our graphic around the Y-axis. Click and hold down your mouse button on this, and go ahead and move either left to right or up and down. If you move left to right, you'll see it actually spins your graphic as if it's fixed to that bar in the center. So already this adds a pretty cool level of depth. Let's go ahead and pull this just a little bit so it looks like we've spun our gears just about, maybe about 45 degrees to the right along this bar. Now let's focus our attention on the red handle running from top to bottom. If you move your mouse pointer over this, again, this shows a little X right below the cursor. This is our X rotation handle, and if we click and drag up or down on this, you'll see it does exactly what it promises, which is it spins our gears along an X-axis. Go ahead and pull this slightly down so it looks like our gears are facing down and to the right, like we see here. If you move your cursor over the blue handle, which appears as an outer blue circle around the other 2 handles, you'll see it produces a small Z below the pointer. This is our Z-axis and allows us to rotate it almost as if we're on the face of a clock, going either clockwise or counterclockwise. Click and drag on that handle and move in either a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion, and you'll see it rotates the graphics as they exist now around that Z-axis. You can almost think of that Z-axis as a bar that runs from the tip of your nose to a point directly in front of your face, going straight ahead. So what's that orange handle on the outside? That allows us actually to manipulate all 3 axes at once. It gives us a little bit more of a free feel. So if we move our cursor over that orange handle and click and drag, you'll see that we can manipulate this along all 3 axes. This is a little bit more tactile, and if you know exactly what you're looking for, it may be a little bit easier than going one handle at a time. The end result is, again, we want these gears looking as if they're facing down and to the right, into the lower right-hand corner of our stage. Switch to your selection tool at the top of the Tools panel. Now what I'd like to do, now that I have these gears positioned exactly the way I want them, is to test and see how my animation has been affected by my new 3D rotation. Go up to the Control menu and choose Test Movie. So this is pretty cool. We actually see all of the animation and tweening that our movie clip contains, but now it's been rotated around these 3 different axes, giving it a whole new look and feel. Go ahead and close the Flash Player. A trick that I often use is actually duplicating a movie clip, especially one that contains animation, and using it to render a shadow of itself. You probably figure we could use the live filters or the drop shadow built in, but sometimes the shadow that we want to create is a little bit more complex than what the drop shadow filter is capable of. This is especially true if your drop shadow doesn't sit directly below at a uniform distance from the original graphic. With your selection tool active, hold down your Option or Alt key. Click and drag on the 3 gears movie clip and clone or drag a copy up and to the left relative to the original one, just like I've done here. Now what I'd like this to do is, since it's going to serve as the shadow for the original movie clip, I actually want to tuck this behind the original movie clip. Leave this selected, and let's go ahead, go to Modify, choose Arrange, and we're going to choose Send to Back. This is actually going to send the copy that I've just made behind the original, which is where it should be. Now here's where we can use some basic smoke and mirrors tricks, namely some live filters and color tints to render this as a shadow. Locate your properties on the right, and go ahead and expand the color effect options. Under Style, go ahead and select Tint. Now what we want to do is make sure that the tint percentage is pulled all the way to 100%. This eliminates any detail of the original movie clip and basically saturates it with the color we've selected above. The next thing I'd like to do is click on the color chip above, and when the swatches panel appears, go ahead and select black in the upper left-hand corner of the swatches panel. So you can kind of see what we're going for here. We've actually used a copy of a movie clip instance to serve as a shadow for another movie clip instance of the same type. To further enhance the effect, what we're going to do is let's go down to our filter options at the bottom of our properties panel, and in the lower left-hand corner, click the Add Filter icon. Select the blur filter from the list that appears, and you'll see here we have just a few options, which is to set the blur amount. Go ahead and set both the blur X and blur Y to 15. So this is starting to look like a true shadow, which is pretty cool. Now, if we want to control the distance and the perspective or skewing from the original object, here's where our 3D translation tool comes in. Leave the copy of the gears, or what we'll now call our shadow, selected, and go up and directly under the free transform tool, once again, click and hold your mouse button down on the 3D rotation tool. This reveals the 3D translation tool underneath. Go ahead and select this. Now what you'll see is that our movie clip appears with a unique set of handles. A green arrow going up, a red arrow going to the right, and a blue center handle. The 3D translation tool allows us to move or slide a graphic along an imaginary X, Y, or Z axis. So rather than rotation, it actually moves the item backwards, forwards, up, or down, based on what axis we're working with. Move your cursor over the green arrow, specifically over the head of the arrow, and you'll see a small Y appears. If we click and drag on the head of this green arrow, it actually will slide our movie clip along the Y axis. Let's go ahead and give that a try by clicking and dragging up or down. Now what's kind of cool is it still keeps that 3D effect. So moving it up or down simply doesn't slide it up or down, but it actually reinterprets the 3D effect as we see it here. Go ahead and pull that up just slightly. Move your cursor over the head of the red arrow. This displays a small X underneath the pointer. This is our X-axis, and if we click and drag on the red arrow, left to right, we'll see this slides our graphic along an X-axis, just like this. You can actually leave that close to its original position. Last but not least, we have the Z-axis, which is that blue point in the middle. Move your cursor over that blue point until you see the Z appear below your pointer. Click and drag, and you'll see how it actually appears to move the graphic further into the distance or closer to your face. Pull this down ever so slightly so the shadow appears slightly above and to the left of the original Gears graphic like we see here, and release. So now you actually understand why I chose to use a movie clip instance or a copy of a movie clip as its shadow rather than the original drop shadow live filter. Here, in combination with the 3D tools, I was able to actually accomplish some slightly different and more advanced effects and position my shadow in a unique way with perspective I couldn't achieve with the standard live filters. Combining the 3D rotation and 3D translation tools on these movie clips added a new level of depth and perspective to my graphics. On a final note, the best part about working with 3D translation and 3D rotation on movie clips is that those effects are actually tweenable. That's right, that means we can actually rotate or animate the rotation of a graphic around any of these axes, as well as any of the effects of the 3D translation tool too. This gives us lots of power and ability to create animations and graphics that really seem like they're coming at you and jumping off the screen. And once again, this feature is exclusive to movie clip symbols only. Any graphics that you want to take advantage of 3D translation or 3D rotation must be included inside of a movie clip symbol instance.